Today's edition of Back Roads of Illinois. We were bringing you lasted for farming sources and information sponsored by AgriGold. Take a moment of silence for our friend and my colleague Mike Perini. He was a farm broadcaster for St. Louis area and central Illinois. Remembering to Mike Perini. Today's edition of Back Roads of Illinois. We were bringing you lasted for farming sources and information sponsored by AgriGold. We were glad you're here on today for our program for today. I'm joining with Brian Irey from Crossroads Coop on Back Roads of Illinois. He is in Grassley, Colorado. I will have a conversation with Stephanie Porter from Illinois Soybean Association on the Field podcast with her about this growing season. You want to be listening to it. Otherwise, you've been listening to Back Roads of Illinois. I'm joining with Brian Irey from Crossroads Coop on Back Roads of Illinois. He is in Grassley, Colorado. Otherwise, Brian, how are you?
I am well today, and yourself?
I'm good. Brian, what is on your list on the WASD on the Northern Plains in Colorado?
It's I think the numbers came in pretty much as expected for Colorado and most of the western area out here. The yields may be a little light, and total production may be a little light, but I think generally speaking, no big surprises in those numbers whatsoever. Uh, the USDA kind of did what we thought they would do with adding to the export number and reducing feeding. I was a little surprised they didn't reduce feeding more, but I think generally speaking, there just was not a big surprise in those numbers. And as I said, I think our crops here in western Nebraska, eastern Colorado, northwest Kansas, our trade territory is really good. I think the potential for the crop is really good if we don't get any more hail here throughout the balance of the summer.
How is the corn crop and how was the yield with the wheat yield in Northern Plains?
The the wheat yields have been incredibly variable. Where the crop came up well last fall, and it has had some moisture. There's been some good 60 bushel to 70 bushel wheat. There's other areas that didn't get quite as much rain where 20 bushels per acre is probably the norm. The one thing that is really surprising is the amount of protein that the wheat is carrying. Areas out here that are traditionally very low pro have been showing 12 plus protein all the way up to 14 or 15. And so from that angle, things are good. I think it's just going to be a little bit shorter crop. There was a lot of acres abandonment and that type of thing, acres that got planted to dryland corn or milo or a crop other than wheat.
I know that I am in north central Illinois. I've been traveling for this summer in central Illinois. However, I do see more soybean acreage than corn. But what is your thoughts with the acreage in Colorado and Nebraska?
I think we're up a little bit in Colorado, and I think the reason we're up is because we've seen some of those abandoned wheat acres get planted to dryland corn. The same up in western Nebraska, especially the Panhandle. There were a lot of abandoned wheat acres up there that got planted to corn. I'm not. I think the USDA might be a little light on corn acres in Nebraska, but I think.
Do you have some thoughts about the weather premium on the grains markets?
Yeah, it's interesting. It just doesn't feel like with the huge managed money short that we have much of a weather premium, if anything, in the market right now. I think if anything, markets are probably a little bit lower than they should be relative to this year's carryout, although we do have a huge crop coming down this fall coming down the pike, and I think the market has adjusted for that. But I just don't feel like today there's any weather premium in the futures at this point.
What is your position on the cattle markets? Let's discuss about the fundamentals with the beef markets.
Still the same story from what we're seeing around our part of the world. Good demand on the product side, especially the lower cuts, hamburger and cheaper cuts. It just feels like never-ending demand there. In feeder cattle are still very difficult to come by. The feed yards, many of them out here are 60% of capacity, and I think they'll probably fill up as cattle begin to come off of grass in late September or early October. But we're probably going to see a struggle to get feeder cattle into these yards for quite some time. Feeder cattle prices, my goodness, August trading at 325 here, all-time highs, and it feels like the yards are having a hard time making money at this juncture, although with cheap corn this fall, I've talked to a couple of feeders who think that prices on cost to gain could get down around the 80 cent a pound level, which should help with that. But all in all, with the Mexican border shut off and no southern cattle getting into the United States, I think we still struggle to find feeder cattle, and yet we're going to have good demand. So I think imports stay at a pretty hefty pace. And all in all, it's not a problem that's going to resolve itself quickly, although it does seem like we're starting to see some ranchers begin to retain heifers here so that they can get their herds built back up.
Yeah, that we see the highest prices for this week. Do you have some concerns about these prices in the deferred contract, Brian?
I think there's always concern when prices get this high. Markets always fill them or fix themselves. I think the only way this one does fix itself is for the U.S. to begin importing more beef, which obviously the cow-calf guy doesn't want to see that happen. He doesn't want to see these great prices go away. But the flip side of that is that demand, as I said, remains really, really good, and you've got to satisfy that demand somehow. But I do think over the course of the next year, things stay relatively firm. But sooner or later, this market will find a way to cheapen prices up.
Do you have any final thoughts on the trends for today's cash grains markets?
I think the producer just needs to take advantage of these rallies as we get them. I think they're going to be short-lived as we move on through the rest of the summer here. We've had nice price action in corn this week. We're up about 20 cents on the week, but it's going to be hard to sustain these kinds of levels. You've got a lot of private analysts taking yield up to 187 to 190, which implies a 16 to a 16.5 billion bushel corn crop, by far a record. And I think we still run into demand issues down the road. So I think as a producer, stay on your toes on marketing. If you're an end user, you probably need to go to the sidelines here for a moment because it still looks like there's cheaper values down the road here.
Thanks, Brian. I hope
Thank,
that you enjoyed your summer.
thank you. Thanks for having me again, and I hope your summer's going well too.
This is Brian Irey from Crossroads Coop on Back Roads of Illinois.